Hello children, good morning. How are you all? Yeah, so examinations are fast approaching. So please keep reading and revising. So today's lesson, again, the portrait of a lady. It is a revision session. What type of writing is the lesson? The portrait of a lady. Autobiography. The portrait of a lady is a part of an autobiography by Khushwant Singh. In this autobiography by Khushwant Singh, he draws a pen portrait. He draws a pen portrait of his. So here he draws a pen picture of his grandmother, old grandmother. Yes, he loves her immensely. He really loves his grandmother. She's so nice, kind, loving, caring. Okay, now let us move on to the theme of the story. In The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. Always remember the name of the writer with correct spelling. We have the theme of innocence, friendship, love, connection, kindness, selflessness, respect, and acceptance. It is also noticeable that the narrator loves his grandmother very much, and if anything, both have a close and loving friendship. Yes, about the story now. The story is written in first person and is in biographical mode. It is a perception of Khushwant Singh of his grandmother through his own eyes. A very touching story that shows the special bond and connection between a boy and her granny. Granny means grandmother, and the changes which comes in the relationship as time passes by. For him, his grandmother was something close to idealism. Now, she's an ideal lady, and despite many differences in their likings, he always loved and respected her by heart. So, see, she does not like her grandson going to English school, learning science, English and all that. But still, they love each other. They have so much of respect for each other. Her love for him was also very deep. Not only that, the grandmother was an epitome of love and sacrifice, which is so grandmother was the epitome of love, sacrifice, which is highlighted as the main theme. The whole story revolves around her. She laid her heart not only for humans but also animals. She's very religious, but with the lapse of time, that means as time passed by, the grandmother is left alone, but she accepts then and never complains. So she accepts. So acceptance is her quality, and she never complains of loneliness. So acceptance of every situation that comes before you is another one. Thus the grandmother is also a strong woman, as she accepts whatever comes before her. After her peaceful death, the sparrows even mourned her death as they stopped. So after her death, the sparrows stopped chirping and they did not even eat the pieces of bread thrown before them. It highlights the change. So in relationship with the passage of time, everything in world is to be faced with courage. The grandmother was a strong woman. She did not express her emotions at the departure of author. Yes. What is the meaning of portrait of a lady? What is the meaning? The lesson is aptly titled The Portrait of a Lady because the author Khushwant Singh is intended it to be a character sketch of his grandmother. The word portrait is a word play on character sketch, and the grandmother of the author has numerous ladylike qualities. Character sketch of the grandmother. Very important question. Grandmother was an old and short lady. Her face was covered with wrinkles. Why? Because she was old. She always wears white dress and take beads of rosary in her hands. Okay, she was very polite, kind lady. She was a very religious woman, telling the beads of her rosary. When narrator lived with her, so she was a polite and kind lady. When the narrator lived with her in village, she always fed dogs with stale chapatis. After coming to city, she was unable to feed dogs with chapatis because in city there are no dogs. Also, she cannot help the narrator in her studies because she cannot help the narrator in her studies. So she could not help the narrator because she did not know anything of science and English. She was sad to hear that there was no teaching about God and scriptures in narrator's school. She also thinks that music was not meant for gentle folk. Yeah, that means yes, good people should not learn music. But when narrator went abroad for his further studies, she felt very sad. Now she spent most of her time spinning the wheel and praying. She fed the sparrows in her spare time. When she fed the sparrows, they sat on her head, hand, etc. and started chirping. They loved her. Yeah, when the narrator came from abroad, she felt happy and collected all the women of her neighborhood and started singing the homecoming of warriors. Due to overwork, that was too much of work, she developed fever. She told her family members that her end was near, that she was going to die. But the doctor said she would recover soon. She didn't spend time with her family members. Instead, she continued praying till she breathed her last. Moral of the story. In the portrait of the lady by Khushwant Singh, when the author Khushwant and his grandmother moved to the city, the turning point occurs in their lives. As a child, he was completely dependent upon his grandmother. But when they moved to a city, the grandmother no longer accompanied the narrator till the school and she was unable to help him with his studies because he would go by motor bus. The story is the author's grandmother's pen portrait. It determines the fact that a person who is truly religious stays composed and calm, generous and kind-hearted. Grandmother was a truly religious person and had compassion for all. That means she was so kind. The author through grandmother hits at the generation gap as referred by the grandmother. She opposed the idea of no teaching of scriptures, and to the music she had a particular antipathy. She did not like. The story portrays a grandson's perception of his grandmother and how their bond of love undergoes changes. Moral. The story puts light on the need of companionship and friendship felt by our elders. It also shows how love and emotion is experienced not only by human beings but animals and birds too. They also understand the language of love, the language of kindness. The portrait of a lady is first and foremost the sweet companionship of the grandmother and the author. The grandparents' old age is well spent. The children learn to take care of them. The author learns the basic education of life in his childhood from his grandmother, like being attended by her, going to school and attending the village dogs and feeding them, as he also feeds on the same stale chapatis. This teaches the compassion for animals. Later on, in his later years also, the grandmother teaches him by the example of her character. She is consistent in her work of spinning the wheel, counting the beads and praying. This type of character brings peace in the home. The author is very successful in his life, learning the basic ethics from his grandmother. So, that is all about the story. So go through this, write down in your notebooks. These questions are very important. Yes, don't forget to do. This is your assignment. Thank you.